Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, and welcome to today's Straight Talk session with Vitality. My name is Jamie, and I'm one of the Vitality coaches. So I'm sure that many of you will already be aware that today is actually World Health Day. Now, for me, and hopefully everyone watching, health is a constant. It's something that we have to protect, we have to look after in order for it to function exactly how we would like it to. At the same time, though, it's also pretty resilient. So when we don't care for it as we should, it can generally be relied upon to repair and heal us. That is until, of course, a certain point. And there are so many parallels with what I've just said relating to health that kind of carry over into the conversation that we're having today about sustainability and looking after the world that we live in. And at Vitality, we are really committed to a green initiative. And for this discussion today, I'm joined by Crista Cullen, who through her experiences in life is deeply aware of the power, but also the fragility and vulnerability of nature. So Crista is a Vitality performance champion and former professional hockey player. Growing up in Kenya and moving to England in her teen years, Crista was very clearly and since then has proven what a talented athlete she is, making over 197 appearances, winning Olympic bronze in London 2012 before going on to achieve the big one in Rio 2016, the Olympic gold medal. Since then, though, Crista has founded Tofauti, bringing her two worlds together. Now, I'm someone who is just generally really interested in the work that the foundation is doing. At this point, though, I am not the expert and I'm not the person to explain that. So I'm going to bring Crista out. Crista, how are you doing today?
All good. Thanks, Jamie.
Thank you so much for joining us. Firstly, your setup looks quite different to mine. Do you want to just explain to everyone where you are right now?
And I live on a conservancy. We have a little small holding farm on a conservancy, and I currently am sitting in a tent that I live in the garden, basically. So that's kind of my home, but it's just got canvas walls and things. So just trying to, a bit different. I guess that's part and parcel of what we're discussing today.
It's definitely authentic, and that's something that you definitely bring to this conversation. So we're going to share a video in a second, Crista, that you've kind of been working on a project through lockdown. But just before we do that, did you want to explain a little bit more about the foundation and the work that you do now?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you sort of eloquently put it across in that my background is sport. And as athletes, we're so privileged to have a voice and a voice that tends to get listened to. And so what I tried to do was capitalize off that through trying to make a difference in my native home of Africa, and more specifically Kenya. So I'm a third generation Kenyan, sort of brought up here, and always my family have always been involved in conservation. So I kind of lived, eat and breathed it, somewhat of a feral child growing up. And then off that basis, I guess that fundamentally sort of compounds how my values are and how I drive my everyday, especially based back here now in Kenya. So the opportunity came off the back of being successful in sport and then launching Tofauti, which means difference in Swahili. And being African and playing for Great Britain, I was always a little bit different throughout the whole environment, really. So I've kind of leveraged that. And then now what we do, the whole idea of Tofauti is to, I guess, understand the complexities of the issues on the ground. So different to other NGOs, because each rural community or each environment is so heavily unique that you have to immerse into that environment in order to know how to build or make something better, or partner with the local community in order to help them build resilience and not reliance, which historically has been a big problem on our continent. So that's where Tofauti sort of came from. And we're now sort of 3 years down the line with a fair few numbers of projects under our belt, with some really able partners, which I'm hugely privileged to work alongside. And we're helping wildlife and communities alike. And I think that sort of synergy is massively important, because, you know, the value of the wildlife has to be for the communities and those that live in and amongst each other. Human wildlife conflicts and some of the things you hear of regularly become big issues. And we're trying to just make a bit of a difference in that area.
It's honestly like amazing to talk to you about this sort of thing, because you really are, I mean, not only your background, but you really are someone that's so close to this. So I'm going to share a little video now, Crista, before we get into it. Something that we entitled The Mud Mansion, because you called it the mud hut, but I'm telling you that for someone who lives in London, has grown up in London, this is a mud mansion. So what I'm going to show now is what Crista got up to during lockdown. Crista, that's unreal, and it's better than my actual house. Now, I've got to ask a question before we get into the topic today. Is that, where did the idea come from? It's not a small project. Like, that's a pretty significant structure you built there.
Yeah, I don't think I quite realised what I bit off before I was sort of immersed in it. And I think my sort of 4 or 5 months, whilst I was writing my thesis for my conservation masters, it kind of was a nice break to go down for a couple of hours and be covered in mud and really sort of get involved. And it what I wanted to do, actually, to be honest, Jamie, is prove that we can live within our means. I think sometimes we're so privileged, especially I've spent a lot of time in UK, as you know, and water comes out of our taps and we don't really think about it much. But only when you sort of immerse in rural communities where people walk 6 hours a day to fetch water and carry it on their heads, do you realize that's a massive luxury. And so what I thought was, rather than just talking about it, why don't I try and do it? We default, especially all over the world, in building in cement and concrete because that's what we've always done. And then, some of the tribal communities here, like the Kamba, the Giriyamas, a lot of the tribal communities here, they all live off the lands. And so I was like, I don't know enough about this. I've never tried to make a mud hut. So I thought, well, this is a great way of learning and harvesting. So all of the wood, even the lava that I built the shower out of, all of it was sort of harvested from within the area as much as possible to try and reduce cost. There's a few luxuries there, but of course I put bottles in the wall to make it a little bit sort of different and fun and uplifting. And yeah, it was an amazing project. It really, really brought to life how cost effectively, if you're creative and give it a bit of time and energy, what you genuinely can make. And the interest has been amazing. People have been fascinated. Firstly, why are you doing this? And it's just to be a better version of myself. And secondly is sort of, the how, and how do we make something eco where, we're sort of a bit more conscious about those kind of things. It's
amazing. And now that we've seen that, I'm pretty sure that we can all agree that you are legitimate. You live and breathe everything that you've said. And as much as I'm sure we'd love to ask everyone watching, it might be a bit too much to expect everyone to go away and build their own mud mansions after this. So what we're going to do for the first part of this conversation is talk about kind of what we can be doing in the UK here and now. But then what is important for me, and hopefully everyone watching, is to understand a bit more about the life that you live in Africa, Crista, and the wider impact of our lifestyle. So I guess initially I want to understand a bit about how we can be more conscious in the UK. And I think nutrition seems like an obvious place to start. It's something that we all can have quite a good level of control over. And we've titled this conversation sort of eco-nutrition. But what does sustainable eating mean to you? Is it something we can do in the UK?
I think it comes down to individuals taking responsibility, and the first bit is just where and how, and it's a very broad topic. So I think you have to also sort of just find a niche somewhere and just make small changes. So that's the first thing I would say. But eco nutrition and sort of sustainable eating, it's about our food and about human health. But broadly speaking, not just me as an individual, my human health. It's about, where are we sourcing those items? Are the people looked after who are making or growing those items? It's a broad topic. So what I would say is, it's about balance. It's about minimizing your waste categorically. And I think little things, I mean, it's silly and I'm going to say it, but bubble and squeak is something we have at Christmas. Every year, bubble and squeak comes up at Christmas, but we have veggies that are going off all year round, not just at Christmas. But, we sort of default to chuck them away rather than thinking, well, how can I utilize this in another way that doesn't necessarily create waste? It can be food for maybe a little hatch of chickens or whatever you might have, depending on your individual scenario and obviously your home makeup. So it's as I say, a very broad topic, Jamie, but I think the sustainability side of it is just about habitual change and about just little things that we can do and just be conscious of around sourcing of our food and how we obviously eat and utilize our food.
It's funny, in the intro, I kind of wanted to bring the worlds of health and sustainability together because they're constants and they're things that we do need to be looking after. And you've just done exactly the same thing with nutrition and eco-nutrition. It's just about small little habits, and that's what our health is. It's doing small little habits consistently day to day. And we've actually just had a really good question in from Johnny, who asks, how does your diet in Kenya different from when you're back in the UK? And I guess not necessarily the types of food specifically, but also, do you change the way you source it? Are there things that you try and keep consistent across both?
Well, I'm really lucky here at home in Kenya. We grow a lot of our own food on a small holding farm. So maybe that sort of skews me a little bit more. But it's also a habit around where you purchase things from. We default because of lack of time and the current environment. Everybody's found they've had a lot more time. And so do we grow a little herb garden just outside on the patio, or do we default to going to a supermarket, which is obviously multiple different things, and we're not necessarily helping the little guy who runs the market and shouts about having some fresh strawberries. So when I'm in UK, I really try, especially at weekends, if I sort of happen to have a little bit of time between when I was playing hockey, between hockey matches, I would pop down to the local market and try and get fresh fruit and veg that was seasonal, rather than kind of expecting mangoes all year round in UK. I just, we have these expectations when actually the natural cycle of a certain fruit and something is not to be provided all year round. And so there's almost, you get those really green, horrible, hard ones. And you're just like, why am I trying to have mangoes at this time of year? It just doesn't make sense. And so I think that's sort of bringing in my two worlds. I eat seasonally. I choose things that are ripe and available in certain times of the year. And if I do have time, I try and localize my shopping, so that in Kenya, the little kiosk, as we call him, the little shop on the side of the road, who has his onions and tomatoes available at certain times of the year, I'll try and buy from him so that he makes a little bit of cash on the side too.
Do you think that we are, because of the choice and the luxuries that we have, do you think that's causing us to create more harm to the world? So by that, I mean, by the fact that we do expect all of these fruits and vegetables all year round, we're not getting the best from the produce, but we're also causing more damage because of the food miles, the travel, maybe the farmers not getting treating how they should. Do you think that's actually one of the reasons, because of the choice we have, that is actually a negative in terms of the effect that's having?
I think the long-term effect is there, Jamie. I'd be lying if I didn't think that. And we are convenience shoppers naturally, because we want to go to one place and have everything on offer. And because of the practicalities of that, we impulse buy. And you know, supermarkets absolutely nail us. You know, they know where to put the bread as far away as possible, where it smells really amazing, and you walk past countless different aisles of things to tempt you on the way to get the bread, because it's a staple diet and everyone has to have bread. So you know that they're quite intelligent in the way that they sort of manipulate our shopping. But I would say we are changing. Would be my natural thought, mainly around, because I know a lot about it. You know, the fruit and veg market, you had to have an aubergine that was a certain shape and a certain expectation. Whereas now we don't have to have that necessarily. An aubergine's an aubergine, and if it doesn't fit a certain style or look, you know, that's actually quirky fruit is kind of a thing, and veg, you know, and this is now, I think, our pushback really as the human race to say life's not perfect. It doesn't have to be a perfect aubergine in order for me to eat it. It has to have a good nutritional quality, and that's important. But that broader issue that you mentioned, Jamie, around, you know, ethically sourcing items and fair trade, is it organic, or, you know, what distances of our food travels, you know, we don't think about that enough when we shop. And how is the packaging? What does it look like? What waste is that going to have? You know, those sort of things have to start being part of our decision-making process, but it takes time for us to get there. And I do think there are some changes on the way, but I do think we can also read the back of things to kind of understand possibly the depth of our food miles that we're maybe contributing to.
Yeah, I think what I've been thinking about when you've been speaking there is our privilege is not always a good thing for the rest of the world. It might be amazing for us, but it doesn't look after everyone else. And I really like, you know, like the odd boxes you can get now, or restaurants which will only serve seasonal foods. Like, they're all nice trends, and hopefully those continue, because like you say, if you get a vegetable that's, you know, in season, it's going to taste better generally as well. So yeah, it's really, I think you're right, and I think that's also again why we're really keen to be having these conversations. And this is not a one-off. It's something, like you say, we're not going to give advice today, I don't think. Do you agree with that? We're kind of just getting people to think about things more, understand a little bit more. It's not about you coming on today and telling us exactly what we should be doing.
No, absolutely. This is about habit formation, Jamie, and habits take a long time to hone in order for them to become a natural thing that we default to. And so this is just, I guess, an awareness discussion around, do I actually think about that when I pop to the shops, or do I go down to a local market or go to a butcher rather than necessarily just going to the meat counter in said supermarket? And these are sort of the little habitual changes that I think we can make in UK and Europe, because, as you say, we are hugely privileged to have stuff that's just within our grasp immediately, and instant gratification is something that we're trying to battle against in the sustainability world, because, you know, the next 10 years for our decade to make some changes to what we have created as humans is going to be really telling. And so we have to play the long game here. And so this is about conversations, just sowing a seed, people understanding or thinking about something a little bit more, and just being conscious of that plastic packaging around their bananas rather than just buying the bunch of bananas.
Come in their own wrapper, don't they?
Exactly.
At this point, though, I think I'm definitely talking on behalf of myself, but I'm sure other people can probably resonate with what I'm going to say, is that I've grown up and lived in London pretty much my whole life. So the effect that our lifestyle has on the planet isn't always that obvious to me. So things like litter, waste, landfill, pollution to a certain extent, they're all definitely evident. But in terms of wildlife, destruction of habitat, that isn't clear to me every single day. And don't get me wrong, it's something that I'm aware of. But these are things that you live with and you're fighting for and battling against every single day. So I guess to really provide some impact to this conversation, are you able to explain what it looks like and what is happening to our environment globally?
Yeah, I mean it's a tough question, because obviously each area or each unique thing is obviously having an impact in its own right. So what we try and do with Tofauti is sort of segment poverty-stricken areas or remote communities or whatever it may be, to make a bit of a change within those areas. So more specifically, we do something called the 10% fence plan. And in that initiative, these are all borders to the national park. Now, we see, I mean, just outside my tent here, there's giraffe drinking and things like that. That is just, it's not normal in London. And I live in Richmond, near Richmond Park in London, just so that I can see the odd deer to make me feel at home. And so basically, you know, our problems, how do we make people care about them who are one remove, like you rightfully say, Jamie? What we've got to do is do that through people, because people relate to people. So communities who live in and amongst wildlife. Now, 70% of our wildlife lives outside of national parks. So you assume all wildlife is fenced in, is happy as Larry. But no, actually what happens is people and livestock live in and amongst wildlife. And so when said wildlife crop raids and eats a family's harvest for a year or yield for a year, there is retaliation. Of course there is. That's their livelihoods. And so what we try and do is work with these communities to try and offer a value to the wildlife. And the value to having the wildlife living in and amongst them is our ability to provide a solar solution fence to put round their homesteads, their little shambas, we call it, which in Swahili means garden. So basically where you grow all your crops and your livestock, essentially by night, obviously fencing them in. So we're almost doing the opposite, which is fencing in the humans rather than necessarily the wildlife, because the wildlife need the space. But the irony about all of this, Jamie, is that with this fence plan is that 90% of the land owned by the community has to be left to fallow. So they have to allow wildlife and their livestock by day to roam those areas and feed. And they're not allowed to cut down trees, not allowed to charcoal, not allowed to do all of the things that notoriously, unfortunately, is happening on our continent, because, you know, people want to utilize or till the land. So they're only allowed to use the 10% of their land in which to sort of exist in. And so basically we are now creating a value. The fence protects the people, protects their harvest, and some of them are getting, you know, in the realms of 2,000% increase in yield, which is just unbelievable. And they're all now crying out for this solution. But this is the immersive piece, Jamie. This is about sitting underneath the coconut tree and chatting to the community and understanding the fundamentals of, well, what are you guys suffering from? Why does it happen like that? Why do you retaliate to the animals? You know, what's the real deal? And how do we start partnering with you to make a solution that will actually help you long term? That's just one of our projects that we do.
It's just unreal how much you can do and the work that there is to do. And so what I like about that is you're helping the communities that are native and live there. I guess from I don't know, I almost feel an element of guilt, or the fact that I don't know, not necessarily, maybe it's just me, but living in this country, I haven't been conscious to look after the rest of the world, because I just don't know how to, maybe, or I just haven't tried hard enough. So I guess a question to you is, do you see, living in Kenya or being in Africa, do you see the impact that other parts of the world have on those areas? So do you see, you know, like we've seen, there's lots of documentaries on Netflix and things like that, and obviously you have to understand how they're produced, but you do see, you know, the amount of plastic in the sea, and from that I can clearly understand that is a human impact that's caused that. Is it evident in Africa, the sort of effect that other people in the world are putting on these areas?
Yeah, well, we're so rural and we're so vast, Jamie. Like our continent is so huge that it's kind of, and as you say, you know, there's extensive plastics in the oceans, and it's absolutely terrible and absolutely valid that people are fighting for that cause. But you can't spread yourself too thinly. That's also a bit of a gamble, right? So so what I try and do is immerse within the communities and understand their problems that they face, and they're really complex, and they're really unique. And I think historically, Jamie, the truth, which no one really says, but it is the truth, and this is all about, being straight and talking about it, is that NGOs and, a lot of big government organizations and everything have assisted our continent or worked with our continent through gifting. And unfortunately, this has created a reliance or sort of a handout mentality with the communities in question. And so we don't, and I say that we, as an African, we don't own the process of the solutions. So we don't take responsibility enough. And so what we try and do is work with these communities and try to work with them in the way that they can start taking responsibility long term, because we have to build a deeper resilience or a way to get water in really remote locations, because without it, communities and livestock and wildlife, they can't exist. So the problems are broad, and the solutions need a lot of thought rather than not necessarily this sort of knee-jerking reaction that a lot of sort of historical things have happened. And yes, they have been short-term solutions, and they have fed Africa, and they have done some amazingly good things. But if we're talking about sustainability, where we started around sustainability of eating specifically, but even in that realm, like in order to produce food for your family and your extended community, how do we do that? We have to understand the soils that we're using. Are there nitrogen fixers in there? Is our crop variable to allow our nutrition to be balanced? All of these things, rather than defaulting in Africa to do maize, and then they wonder why their yield is not happening, because they don't actually fix the soil in any way. And this is about partnership. This is about engagement and agronomy testing and working with them long term, so that they start owning this process of being the best version of themselves individually, and we handhold them through that.
I had no idea how complex it was, but we don't have enough time in a day, let alone half an hour or so, to discover this. But I guess what I've taken from what you've said, though, is that your foundation and the work that you're trying to do is help people in their own environments look after them better and be more sustainable. And taking that away to everyone watching, I can look after my environment a bit better. I can look after my little corner, and that will make a big difference. And I think this topic
Sorry,
deserves...
Jamie, you might have to just repeat that for me.
Oh, okay. Did you freeze? We are doing it international today. I was just saying that what you were saying is that, your work is all around helping local people look after their own world a little bit better, make it more sustainable. And you're not trying to, like you say, we're not relying on handouts anymore. You want them to thrive in their own environment. And thinking about what we're doing here, it's just about looking after our little corner of the world so we can do things better. And naturally, that will then mean that everyone else does things better. And I think that's maybe the one thing that I've learned from you today. And this topic does deserve so much more attention. And we definitely will give that. And we will hopefully work a lot more closely with you. But I guess, what would your message or one take-home point be to everyone watching today?
I think a little bit along the lines of what you said, Jamie. Habitual change is a process. And sometimes you just need, when somebody brings energy, should I say, to a sports field or to a business meeting, and we're all in those, it's infectious, isn't it? We sort of, you breathe off of it when others sort of are passionate about something. And so why can't we do that around our homes? So try something new, little things like grow some watercress on, a little thing and sprinkle it in something you've grown, and feel that fulfillment that you get because you've produced it. And then that knocks on to trying something else or something new, or have a better waste management system in your house. And you can live in a little flat like I used to in London and recycle and have like 6 different boxes and put everything in different things and take it away. It's effort and time, and it's about habits and buying into that, and then talk about it, share with other people the little things that you're doing, and hopefully that can then knock on to other people. And if we can just change, 1% of habits, then we're making the world a better place. It's just we've got to be the first people to do that. And sometimes that's the hesitation, like, because we've always done it a certain way. Why can we not try and do something a little bit differently? Because then we might learn something along that journey.
Everything you've just said is exactly the same with our health, right? It's just about small habits, small behaviors, doing them consistently, make a big change overall. And that's exactly kind of what you've described. And I think it's an area that you said about someone walks into a room and inspires you and brings energy. That's exactly what you do. So for anyone watching, Crista, and wants to find out more about Tafauti, is there somewhere that you direct them?
Yeah, so if you want to hear a little bit more about what we do, please check us out on our website or on the social media platforms. Tafauti is quite a tough one. So it's called Tofauti is how you spell it. And check us out. We are unique, we are different, we're nimble, we're small, and we're really trying to just do what we can to try and leave a legacy.
I mean, you've always been successful, and I have no doubt, like, just everyone listening today surely is inspired to do something. Someone's actually just asked me a message. Am I going to try and grow a few herbs in my window ledge? 100%. Even if they die, I will try my best, and I'll do something, and I'll tell people, and I'll share it. And I think there is no way that we can wrap up this session today. Like I said, I don't really want to either. This is a constant. But I'm actually going to steal a quote, Crista, from your Tafauti website, and on there it says, "We think the challenges facing Africa can only be tackled through an approach that unites. So core to everything we do is our focus on building teams to create and sustain solutions." I feel like that's something that is consistent with everyone, no matter where you are. We can spread the message, we can be accountable, we can be responsible, we can be a force for good. Is that what you're promoting everyone else can do as well?
Yeah, I mean, we're trying to do it in our little way, in our way of sort of engaging and working with communities. That doesn't have to stop there. As I said before, passion and drive, it is infectious. So if there is something within somebody that has listened today to just try something new or get involved, or go down to the local garden centre and pick out something to try something new, or build a wormery, or there's so many things that we could cover that's sort of within this realm. But it is just about getting out of your comfort zones, and the current climate is a perfect place to sort of try some of this new stuff, because we've done a lot of damage in our world over a long period of time. And this is our chance. To start going, do you know what, Mother Nature, you've taught us a few lessons now, and we're going to try and do some good stuff to you, because you kind of deserve it. And we need to all take responsibility in order to start achieving some of that stuff.
The whole way through we've been having this chat, I keep on hearing birds and wildlife in the background. I think that we need to come to you, and we need to bring this to life more, and we need to do a session from Kenya.
Of course, come and build a mud mansion.
Done. I'm so in. Crista, you are a legend. Everything that you're doing is amazing, and I hope everyone that's watching today has been inspired and has learned as much as I have. We will hopefully do a lot more of this. We'll keep shouting the message. I'll keep you updated on how the growing goes and all those sorts of things. But for everyone watching, please do continue to support. Join in our sessions. But in the meantime, also take care. Hopefully look after yourselves. And Crista, will catch up with you again really, really soon.
Thanks, Jamie.